today's meeting is to hear the budget recommendation from staff, and at this time we'll go ahead and turn it over to county manager and let him proceed with the budget recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to present this budget. It takes a long time to get to this point, a lot of staff time. And if you were maybe putting a percentage of the time, maybe mine is about 20% of the time, and the other 80% is Ms. Bell, our finance director. She does a lot to get here to this day with a lot of the number crunching and a lot of the coordination with the departments. And so I do meet with them and talk to external agencies and do, again, maybe about 20% of it, but a lot of this behind the scenes stuff she is doing, and so couldn't do it without her, so appreciate that every year. And so I've said before over the years, this document is my attempt to synthesize what I believe your priorities are. It also, and you'll see a slide in a second, it also is an attempt to meet state requirements that we sometimes have for our pension, sometimes health insurance, different things that we have no control over, but also things that are obligations that we have, debt payments and things that are coming on. So it's a combination of things and factors that we'll talk about. So I'll jump in, and if you have a question about anything you see, you've got your packet in front of you as well. Please throw something at me, stop me, and we will address it at that point. So I've added this quote in here last year. This is exactly what it should be about. Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me where you spend your money, and I'll tell you what they are. So again, I hope and think that what you see here represents the priorities you all have communicated that you'd like to invest in this community. So again, it's very small, even on a big screen. So this is just the county organization, the departments that are internal. Is the point of that. And for the external agencies, there are quite a few external agencies. As we've talked before, some are mandated, and I put those at the top. McDowell County Schools, McDowell Tech, you're required by law to fund those entities, of course. And there's a few others in that category. There are some you fund just because at some point your predecessors or you have decided that it's a worthy cause and it's a public purpose, and you want to put funding to that organization to do further good in the community. I did break out just a little bit under service district taxes and sales tax. The fire departments and rescue squad are funded in those ways. We do have a billing relationship with the rescue squad, but they're not directly funded by the organization and this budget. So just quickly about the current year as we're approaching the end. I had talked with Ms. Bell about this. It was tempting just to have a whole slide just with a big word that said COVID in bold letters, underlined 4 times. The fact that there are other things other than COVID response, I think shows that while that was sort of a sucker punch for all of us personally and professionally, organizationally, a lot of good and great things still happen. Schools still operated, of course, we supported them, but internally we did what we had to do to get the job done. With all the modifications and everything else, the staff did a wonderful job.
And Mr. Wood, can I add real quick?
Sure.
That during COVID, the board did not cut any funding for our school system nor for our community college.
That's an important note, yes, sir. So some of the things that, there's a lot of things that we could talk about all day, but these are certainly some of our highlights, especially of a capital nature. You authorized a little over a year ago when the pandemic was really starting, and it was a little scary for good reason, but especially on the financial side, what to do with the emergency services capital projects. So again, the headquarters across the interstate and Station 4 on the north side of Marion. We had conversations, Ms. Bell and all of us with the board at that time to say, we don't know what July or December or June or whatever will look like financially. We were hearing very dire predictions on sales taxes especially. And there was concern if we were able to afford the debt based on that for that project. So we were at the point where it was not necessarily no looking back, but it could always have changed things. So the board did direct that be bid, and based on what we bid then, it was perfect timing. We had a much lower bid than the estimate, and certainly if we were bidding this year, it would have been way over estimate. So again, some things work out even in the midst of the pandemic. So Station 4 opened in March. That has been working very well for our response. They're at a little bit modified operation right now since they're still having the downtown station. So once the headquarters on Barnes Road is completed later in this calendar year, early 2022, we'll be at our 4 stations set up. So very proud of how that's all shaping out. The public shooting range project has been underway, I think, for over 5 years. As far as planning for construction, it started last fall. Again, we're starting things, good things in the midst of a pandemic, but have a great local contractor with England Builders doing most, and Settles Grading, their subcontractor, doing the work there. That will really take off now that the bridge over Muddy Creek is somewhat completed. And we're still hopeful of a November opening for that. So very excited about to get that online, as I know you are. We had several economic development public hearings during the year. Again, internally we had some just concerns, but when you see that happening from private companies that despite everything going on, they still want to come here or grow locally, that's exciting. And so a lot of those are still in the works. We have several building reuse projects that are initiating right now, so that's wonderful for that investment. The board authorized the purchase of the former Percy Funeral Home. In this room on Thursday will be the bid opening, and if everything goes well for that, we hope to have those bids before you at the June 14th meeting for that renovation into administrative offices for the county. Again, I didn't put COVID in big, huge, bold letters, but almost everything is affected by it, and I'll touch on. You granted 2 salary adjustments during the year, totaling $6.25 for general employees and $7.75 for public safety employees. You were able to do that because of some caution that was built into the current year budget, but also some of the returns that we were seeing on sales taxes, for example, were very positive. So that's very much appreciated, and that's an understatement by staff, and those are big numbers that you don't.
Hey, Mr. Wood, that's basically unheard of. You show me every county and state did that. I like to meet them, shake their hand. Our board puts a premium on our employees. We value them greatly.
It's a big deal, yes, sir. A general statement, many difficult challenges associated with the pandemic were overcome. We, with testing and vaccinations and masks and all the different things going on throughout the year, to get to this point where the virus is still there. There's still a lot of people that we would encourage to get vaccinated if they would like, but from the depths of where we were, especially in the winter, it's definitely sunnier days.
I think we're at about, over 30% right now in Ferguson County. Vaccination.
Right, it's below half, so that's something that it'll pretty much at the people that are, I'll get it when I can get around to it. There's a little bit of that, and some that are maybe not interested as of yet, but the staff are continuing to demobilize from emergency services and turn it more so back over to the health department. which is more so their day job. And so we will continue to support where needed, but primarily the vaccination process and the testing that continues will be a health department led project. So again, I want to make sure we highlight the thousands of volunteer hours that took place going back to really to January with the vaccinations, and we would have been a lot harder job without those folks showing up in the cold days to help. And so again, we've had many thousands of vaccinations for McDowell County residents and folks from out of county that came and utilized the service. So that's all right too. Vaccine. So did you bring your binoculars? So if you did, you can zoom in on that. You do have this in your packet. What this is the, I call it the quartile of our peers. This is the 25 counties that are in our population group, so 12 above and 12 below. We do toss out at least one Dare County. Their population, census population is pretty close, but their seasonal is probably over 200,000 people, and their budget is, I think, 3 or 4 times ours, so we do take them out as an outlier. Again, this is hard to read, even with a big screen, but you have it in your packet. And I will jump to mine. The summary of this is that McDowell County employs 34 fewer employees than the average of that group. We budget $11.6 million fewer than that average. Our tax rate is 12.41 cents below the average. We collect $5.1 million in property taxes below the average. And our average general expenditure per capita, so that's every man, woman, and child, is $209 below average. So just to kind of put it in context how we compare to our peers, at least financially. So I've talked about this to some degree. It's like a sideways flower or something, but what we have sort of a filter here, the green circle of available resources. And so you could make some of these circles bigger than the other ones, but we have state mandates that we have to do certain things. We have your priorities, of course, to maybe a smaller circle, the agency department requests and then public requests. And so if I'm making sizing of circles here, the board priorities and state mandates would be larger, but ultimately you have to go through what's available for expenditure. So that's what you get to decide as well. So some of your priorities for that we've heard about the current year and definitely prior years, not a lot has changed. Some counties are different, but if you looked at the other 99, most would be pretty similar. You want to increase public education funding when possible. Public safety is very important, so you like your investments in emergency services in the sheriff's office. Improving county facilities, that is something that this board and prior boards, especially for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, has worked on, where there's been a lot of investment. This current, this room is an example of that for some external agencies, where you have turned inward to focus on county facilities. Courthouse comes to mind, of course, of one big project that was maybe overlooked for a while. Community and economic development is, again, bread and butter for this county. And so there are some targeted staff additions in here to better serve the needs of the community. And there is again, the past year or so, we've talked about some long-term operational capital needs. So I'll hit some of those that very few, if any, will be a surprise to you. It's just more in black and white, literally.
I don't think anyone could say that this board has been insensitive to our emergency services and sheriff department, because we have, I think that this board has been really good to those departments in our way of helping them.
That's right, yes, sir. So quickly, the process, we are governed by the North Carolina Local Budget and Fiscal Control Act that lays out the responsibilities of the county financially, but it also has the expectations when putting together a budget. The highlights is on or by June 1st, the budget has to be presented. You have to have a hearing at least 10 days after that and before it's adopted, and it must be adopted by June 30th. How you put it all together, pretty much otherwise, there are some guidelines, but it's pretty much up to the local government. And so typically, again, Ms. Bell is starting, honestly, January, February, looking at the revenue projections. At the end of February, early March, we send out packets to the internal and external agencies. And when those start coming back, especially the internal departments, I'll meet with them and go over requests, especially if they're outside of the norm, and go through those. And sometimes external agencies, we will have meetings, either board or staff, sometimes both, and have a better understanding of what the request is. And so, again, your hearing, we're proposing for June 14th. We will have the budget posted online, and it'll be at the clerk's office after today. And so, there's the schedule. So we'll get into some actual dollar signs here. This is for the document that you have with you, the budget ordinance, or half of it. So for public education, there's a recommendation of 3 3/4% for their operating, which is $330,000. For the community college, there's a little bit less of that on the percentage-wise for operating, 20,708. But a significant increase on the capital funding, which has been identified as more so of a priority for the college. So you see the total for your education there. We'll talk about that again in a second. Some public safety expenditures, the EMS facilities debt of almost $99,000. That is the second year of a payment on the two facilities. This is the first year where there's some principal in it. Next year, the payment will be about twice of what it is now when it is full principal and interest. There are some emergency services positions in this. Most, if not all of this, is covered by other revenues, but it is an impact on the expenditure side. The sheriff's office and at the jail, there are positions identified there. So there will be 3 in the sheriff's office side and then 2 in the jail side. There is an offset of $150,000 of that, and so the true cost of the general fund is closer to $200,000.
The 346 has the offset. You need to take another 150 off that, so really, 346, so really, it's like
196.
196, okay.
Right. So we're putting, it's not the cleared amount, but that is the truth.
But the following budget year, though, you're going to have basically 496 then, right? Is that correct?
That'll be the 346.
346, yeah.
So these are a little bit more smaller font here in your packet. So it's a general expression, but I'll get into what it all means. County organization improvements, what does that mean? Again, you approved 2 adjustments in the current year, and while there was no adjustment recommended for July 1, we do have to account for that, of course, in the upcoming budget. So that's a little over $1.1 million that will be added to the next year's budget. That was not there at the start of this year. And there is, heard from Ms. Sprouse about some staffing needs she has in her department. She had at least one more than is recommended, but based on some, what's the word you used the other day?
Contracting instead of an
No, for compliance issues. Thank you. the state requires more workers for the foster care area and the adult services area than we currently have. And for compliance and risk, those are recommended more so than others. So workers' compensation, when your payroll grows, so does your cost for workers' compensation. So that's an increase there. The special project administrator, this is something that we're looking at the guidance from the ARP or the ARPA to where we have quite a bit of money coming to the county over the next 2 years and limited staff capacity to administer the funds, especially when it comes to things like water projects. And so we're looking for ARPA to hopefully help offset some, if not all of that, to provide some staffing assistance where it is lacking right now.
Question on that, would that go away when the funding went away?
It would depend on board priorities.
Gotcha.
It would be a full-time employee, just the way we have to operate things with the retirement system. Waste collection additional hours, this is based on some staffing expansion for our convenience sites being open more so on long weekends, holiday weekends and things. Just something that's been a board priority. I talked about state mandates. The retirement system, they pretty much tell us what our increase will be in July, and the only way out of it is to back out of the retirement system completely. So $288,000 will go to the retirement system to offset future payments to retirees. So that's a heavy lift, definitely. And we do have some additional Parks and Recreation staffing monies. It's not staff per se, but there is a recommendation that due to some new, and this isn't related to Mr. Marsh, just probably, I know we haven't talked about this. This is anticipating program expansion, and again, possibly, if not offset with new revenues generated inside the department, but we do have to show that cost. So moving down to county facilities and equipment, there's EMS capital debt, and so that is vehicle payments, that's heart monitor payments, DSS facility improvements. I think the prior board directed maybe about a year ago to do some facility improvements to that building, the main building, specifically carpet and paint and things. And so we have specifically put this amount of money based on some estimates we've received, and it's in the DSS budget, and that's important because while there are some bidding rules we have to follow, there's an offset if we follow the proper procurement process. If Mr. DePoyster would get bids and we're paying it out of the general fund and don't follow formal bidding, we wouldn't be required to follow formal bidding otherwise under this, just getting quote prices. But if we follow a certain process, we will get part of that cost reimbursed. So it's worth
What are we still doing? I know we painted, did we do some paint over there in the carpet already?
The carpet has not been done.
There's some glass and windows put in there.
So there's been more of an enhancement on the security, so the doors and things, that was done, but the carpet was not done. A lot of that had to do with lack of vendor interest. We could only get one vendor, and so through this process, the hope is by formally advertising through, there's a state website and things we have to use, it's my understanding. We like local companies and want to get business to them.
I think we went back and visited that and put more emphasis on the security of the building than
right. And those things were done. Yes, sir, absolutely. That was definitely needed and appreciated. DSS capital debt is mostly vehicles. We put a lot of miles, our social workers do, visiting homes. Sometimes they are, unfortunately, which we have a great recruitment program for foster homes. Sometimes they're still even at that placements in other counties, even down east. And so there's a lot of miles put on those vehicles. And so that is mostly for vehicle debt. Waste collections, capital debt, that is going towards a garbage truck payment. And so we have a truck payment rolling off. We anticipate the new one being more expensive than the last one that we financed. So this is additional payment for that. And then recreational capital improvements. About 5 or 6 years ago, the park improvement line item was $10,000. That doesn't go very far. And the recommendation for July 1, I think, is $100,000, Allison. It's in that neighborhood. So we have a lot of facilities, and as you know, it takes a lot of effort sometimes to keep those up. But once you do it, get them where they need to be, I'm sure Mr. Marsh will. It will take some funds to get there. So that's very important. Some community economic development. We've talked about solid waste quite a bit over the years, how expensive that is. We anticipate a little over $200,000 of increased disposal costs. Some of that has to do with an anticipated an adjustment from our Hauler Republic industries. They are allowed to go up with the CPI every year. Also, the economy may cool down a little bit in some sectors, except for maybe building materials over the past year. But as the economy roars back, as we all hope, people buy more things and they throw away more things, and it costs more money to throw things away. So it's a lot of money, of course. Health department operations. This county and Rutherford County have been working for at least 6 or 7 years to increase the funding every year to get it more in line of where the state is saying it should be on a per capita basis. We're still much lower than we're about half of where we would be if it was a county operated department. Shooting range operations, we anticipate where this will be run as an enterprise fund under the Parks and Recreation Department. But we don't know what the income will be, and so we have 87.5 as the operational cost right now. Could be higher, could be lower, could be completely offset with user fees, but we have to plug in something with it being an unknown right now.
And y'all didn't plug in any type of revenue for that, just the expenditure?
Not at this point.
There would have to be paid range officers out there.
Absolutely.
And I would recommend that you hire temporary. You could hire 2 or 3 temporary range officers. Then that would save on the benefit end of it. They would just be receiving.
That's right. There's one other county that has a range that's more on our end of the spectrum, being Pender County, and almost all of their staff are part-time, and they have a large roster for that with the hours they're open.
So our volunteer fire departments are doing, to get full-time guys, they have the full-time position, but they have 3 or 4 people. Like Tony said, it's actually filling the position, and it helps them out on benefits.
And so definitely as we get closer, and Mr. Marsh is brought on board to help flesh this out, we'll be able to hone that as we get into the year before hopeful November opening. This board and the prior board, but more importantly, this board have committed to a $100,000 part-up match for the Trailhead project that you've heard about several times. And so you reconfirmed that several weeks ago. That application has been submitted, and there are some folks from the part of the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund Authority coming to the community next week to see where the property is and get a better understanding. So if that project is not awarded, those funds could be re-obligated for something else or de-obligated. There is $45,000 of generic trail development. You've been supportive of various trail projects like the G5 and others, Friends of Honaflora. And so those are not recurring commitments necessarily that you've made, but just in case there were asks or other projects that come along in the year. And so the actual proposed budget You see the number there. It's a little over 49, quite a bit over $49 million. And so the percentage, 8.36, you look at the history, FY20, it was 6.58, but that is a large number. But look back at last year, you were at essentially 1%. And so while that is a large number, when you average out over the 2 years, you're more in line. And why would you want to do that? Well, you granted an salary adjustment in this current year that
Several $1 million,
that you didn't, we couldn't guarantee to do in July. So a lot of that 8.36 is reflected in the current year. So you're just looking at July to July, not from amended budget to July 1. We do have the tax rate in there, I think when you were left off. It's my fault. The proposed tax rate is 58.75 cents for the general fund. So you see that rate history as well as the tax base history going back to fiscal year 2009. Again, if you went to, there's always one exception, but I'll say with some level of confidence that 99 other counties, the largest single source of revenue is going to be property tax for every other county. It may not be 51%. It may not even be, Dare County, as I mentioned earlier, their sales tax revenue may be 30% based on the tourism and different things. But I'd like to see a county where property tax is not the largest revenue source. It definitely is here. Significant revenue changes. So we talked a lot about expenditures, and so on the revenue side, there's a property tax anticipated increase of a little over $737,000 in here. There's some additional DSS revenue, building permits. If you talk to Mr. Suttles, he and his office have not slowed down. So a lot of that has to do too with as busy as they are, but also the types of projects that are happening. They are seeing a lot of the high-end homes, especially, are continuing, and those property owners or developers are swallowing that additional cost right now. And so that is most of the work that we're seeing, but there are some other things, and we're hopeful that'll level out in the rest of the county. DMV reimbursement. Again, our staff do a fantastic job there, and we'll talk at a future meeting about some additional services that could be an option there.
That's a 28% jump in the revenue projected. They're doing a great job.
They do, and hats off to Miss Anya Cray and her tag office manager, Daphne there. We do have, this may be getting a little ahead of the board, but this is a recommendation. It's on the June 14th agenda to get some clear direction on large-scale spending from the American Rescue Plan funds. We had some funds or existing projects in the budget that there was a water project specifically that comes to mind of $117,000 that is a one-time eligible project based on the guidance, as far as we can tell, that we would recommend allocating some of the rescue monies for, and not use the general fund monies. So it's a recommendation.
Give me go into a little depth on that American Rescue Grant and what all it does.
Yes, sir. So this will be mostly by memory, but the American Rescue Plan, was passed in March. We had guidance issued on May 10th. It was the day of the meeting, actually, last meeting, that the bill had 4 target areas that local governments could spend money on And we were, we saw the bill pass in March, and it was fairly generous in some areas and pretty restrictive in others in the actual bill language. And so a lot of times when you have federal funding, you look past that to whatever the guidance from the relevant federal department is, so Treasury. So Treasury will put out what guidance is what it is on, this is what the bill says. We're not going to contradict it at all, but we're going to spend 150 pages giving examples and better clarity of what you can spend it on. So very clear that COVID response is a covered activity. Well, again, the virus isn't gone, but we're not, as an organization, responding that much to COVID right now as we were a year ago or even 6 months ago. So the CARES Act money we had prior to this one, you will accept the word liberal. It was very liberal in the interpretation how you could utilize funding. This is not. This is much more restrictive.
What are the 4 areas?
So on COVID response, so that's pretty vague, but primarily if you had employees or departments responding to COVID, so doing vaccinations, doing testing, sanitizing, those sorts of things. And maybe with very few exceptions, we're not responding to COVID right now. So there's no way we could say, yes, we're responding. So more or less, that one goes away. Hopefully forever. Hopefully 6 months from now, we're not saying we're responding to COVID again. So we need help from the community on that one. Some of the other ones, you're allowed to do some investments in what I would call community programs. So a lot of social welfare type programs. You're also allowed to do investments in public safety staffing for lower income, especially based staff, so like supplemental pay for those. And also you're allowed to do infrastructure. And the guidance is very clear that infrastructure is what it says in the bill. It's water, sewer, and broadband.
That's good.
It's not buildings or roads or driveways or parking lots and sometimes we, maybe speak for myself, we would like that to be a little bit more broad, so we could pave a parking lot or do those sorts of things. But it's very, very narrow in that sense. But we have a water system. We've been talking for several years about, more than several, how can we grow that system beyond where it is now? Grants aren't like they used to be. Our system revenues are small for debt payments. And so we're just kind of at that crossroads, like, what do we do? And this comes along where you can obligate towards.
I was hoping that was part of it. So
It absolutely
answered my
is.
question.
So on the June 14th agenda, I do have on there asking for direction. If it was water, for example, to give us free rein to start going out for engineers and those sorts of things. So,
I think we have to look at broadband too, though, not just water.
and that's something, there's some additional funds coming from the state level. So hopefully that'll, with the budget kind of being held up between the state and the House, they're working on the budget before they address their COVID money. So they have, I think, $1 billion or $2 billion. I just, that's a lot of money difference, but they have some broadband plans, from what I understand. So it may all play out where they may take care of a lot of it through the great grant program that they're working on expansion right now. So lots of opportunity to do a lot of good things there, absolutely. So for additional revenue changes, you have the sales tax. For the current year, we've talked about this, we were uncertain, as everyone else was, unless you had a real working crystal ball. We had dropped the sales tax down from the prior year. And what you see here is almost to a penny what we would estimate based on receipts we have received up to now,
what it would end up at June 30th. So a lot can change between this moment and the 3 months of sales tax receipts that were still outstanding.
But we got historical data, and actually, we'll probably, he'll share, I'm sure. But I went by and asked for this information yesterday, and they were good to get it to me. Over the last 4 years, we've seen an average growth in sales tax of 5.7%. And so 2% is $161,000. So you're definitely safe to say 2%, but that's more volatile, they're right. But we have historically a pattern where we've had an average of 5.7 growth in the sales tax.
In sales tax, we are cautious and we couch our words and things, that is definitely a revenue where we just kind of hold our breath on because it is so dependent on consumer behavior. And so this year, behaviors have changed where I'm not driving to the mall. I'm going to sit on my couch and order online, or I'm going to go to the local store or whatever instead of going to Asheville or Hickory or wherever else. And so how much of that stays where people say, Walmart delivers to my house. I don't need to go to Target, or Target delivers to my house, or Amazon or whoever else. Where we didn't 5 years ago, for that matter, on the online sales for those out-of-state companies, we were getting sales tax as a state and a county from those online sales that we never did before. So that has helped us over time as well. If you're looking at get on my, I'm not a chamber director, but if someone had, their preferences of what makes the biggest impact, shopping in the brick and mortar store is maybe the first because you are paying the taxes, of course, but that money that you're paying that vendor is invested in this community. So a brick and mortar here. If you're not going to do that, can't or whatever. Ironically, for us here locally, it's better for you to go online and shop instead of driving somewhere else for lots of different reasons. But we wish all our neighbors well, but we really like when people can... And
support your local movie theater.
It's going to hurt the bigger cities more than it will us.
That's right.
The county and city work with other groups to try to recruit a movie theater here in McDowell County, and we've got one. So you don't need to drive back. If you're watching this, don't drive to Asheville, and definitely don't drive to Burke County. Those seats are rough. But come to McDowell County and stay in McDowell County and go watch a movie here. We've got an excellent theater with great popcorn, and the seats are very solid. So here's an infomercial. Stay local and enjoy. And save yourself the time driving.
It's a great deal.
I'm done. We'll do that.
So lots of sales tax changes there. Real estate tax, this is based on real estate transactions at the deeds office. And not to get off track, but one of the things for our meeting every month that Mr. Abernathy has asked city manager and I to report on are different economic indicators. And so sales tax, definitely, I report on building permit numbers, as well as the next one, tourism tax. But one of the things I'm going to add to that list is the deed transfers, because that's a big economic indicator, and you can track that number too. So.
And the tourism tax, actually, that all goes straight to TDA, correct? We don't retain that?
We retain an administrative fee 3% for the time of the staff.
We might need to look at that and go 5%.
I think some of that's limited.
Is it? I would go to what the state would allow.
It's in a house bill that we can only do 3%.
Okay.
Up to 500,000 and then 1% over 500,000.
Do we do 1% over 500? Well, we'll be there this year projected.
No doubt. They're doing really well. And those monies, not to talk about their budget, but TDA has talked about expending a lot of funds on capital projects. And so that helps this organization out where they're not just spending it on magazine ads and brochures. They can put those monies towards capital things that otherwise you might be asked to fund. EMS billing fees, some of this is related to the addition of staff and some change of service for transporting patients from the local hospital to Asheville. or other hospitals, but also a little bit, we're being again cautious on the new billing company. We didn't want to jump way high on an estimated revenue there. So if they deliver what they promised, that number could be higher, but you don't want
And
to.
higher in next year's, it will be realized in this new budget that we adopted, correct? To some degree?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, having a year under our belt especially would be very good. And so our expenditures, we talked about the pie chart for revenues. On expenditure side, most counties will be very similar. Public safety, human services, and education. While ideally the education is the largest piece of the pie here, that is always something we try to work towards. It's good to see that number growing over the years and holding steady, if nothing else.
It is not the largest.
It is not, sir. It would be nice. So we talked about the education funding, again, a huge priority for this board. We talked about the proposed increase in the current expense, representing 3.75%, holding everything else steady. In case ever anyone wonders, the capital outlay that used to be higher years ago, and the school board at that time asked that go towards operating. Indirectly through sales tax and lottery funds, capital is funded, of course, so they get more than $53,000 a year. It just doesn't go through the general fund in that same way or at all. McDowell Tech, again, their current expense would grow a little over $20,000, and the capital outlay is a priority for this board to increase as able. And so that's definitely something I know you want to keep working on. And so this is something that this has probably been on here 20 years, if not longer, but when you go back to those other 24 counties, it would be worth someone's time, be a good intern project for somebody, but out of those 24, how many of those have what is called a household user fee or a trash tax or whatever? My gut is the ones above our population and maybe the ones right below probably have a household user fee, if not all of them. I won't say with any certainty at all.
Ms. Wilson, we'll direct you and the chairman to entertain a motion. I'll make a motion right now to direct staff to assess what other counties are doing and bring back future meeting recommendations.
We've got a motion on that. We have a second. Second. Got a motion, second, any discussion?
Is it just to bring it back to us? No, we're not
Study.
voting. Okay.
Yeah, whenever we, just to get information, because
Okay.
if we're allocating $1.3 million out of the general fund just to make that thing balance every year, when he starts fixing it,
Absolutely.
we're not doing our job. We're not sitting here asking him to give us recommendations how to fix it. Same thing goes with our health insurance, the self-insurance. We're working on that, but even there, I know we got a motion, but I'll just say that we know you're going to be bringing back information as far as that goes to the board too, concerning that whole area.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for staff to investigate that and bring back some information on it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
That's a lot of money, of course, it's an understatement, so we'll work on that and bring it back to you. We do have the debt schedule for some of our major capital items, especially your EMS bases. I don't know that I'll be here in 2040 and not even on this earth, but hopefully. The Nebo water line comes off this next year. It's a small balance. Old Fort Senior Center coming off very soon as well. And then you get into more longer term, some more recent things you're doing. Jail and courthouse, we're in less than double digits now. That's good. And then for that was done prior to the courtroom addition. So We have, just for informational purposes, sometimes lending institutions, banks will reach out to us about refinancing debt. Interest rates are really low right now, and so was it maybe 4 or 5 months ago you looked into just some scenarios, and based on the rates at that time, which were about the same from some of the prepayment penalties and different things, it was almost more of a cost than it was a savings to refinance the debt. So if you ever had any additional long-term debt, it might be worth it at that time, but not recommended. Speaking of, maybe playing that segue, but some notable capital requests. As I said earlier, I don't think a lot of this is maybe a surprise, but this is just is some of the capital planning we really got into more so this year. These are things that have maybe risen to the top from conversations with staff, and the last one is the state conversations with staff. Mentioned the DSS building. There are 3 different buildings. All 3 are capacity, if not beyond that. DSS has not really right now, with still some COVID type concerns, but 2 staff and an office less than 100 square feet, and maybe about 20 offices. And so that's an area where there has to be a long, hard look at. The probation parole, again, we've talked about with your desire to have that move downtown. I was at the admin building this morning for a meeting, and I noticed that I'm not in there anymore really that much, except for periodic visits. I noticed the air was not working, so I did reach out to Mr. Foister, and that's being addressed. But that's the systems there are old; they're close to 50 years old, which is hard to believe. But at least something like an HVAC will probably need a replacement. This is the original system. That is an eligible expense, by the way, for the ARPA funds, ventilation
So he's going to get bids for us to bring to the board.
if you would like us to. We have talked to folks that like work with Chuck Hamrick just on what they might recommend. But he's not at that stage unless you were to tell him to get bids on it.
So what's the timetable? What do you recommend?
We would recommend sooner rather than later an evaluation of that system and how to replace it. The problem you could get into, and we got in that a little bit at the courthouse, is ripping existing ductwork out and things gets you more involved than just changing out the system.
We got to fix it. Mr. Chairman, I've got no issue at all with him starting the move to be able to give us some type of recommendation in the future. I mean, they're going to recommend, and to recommend, you're saying you need direction?
Yes, sir. Start now.
Was you putting that in?
Oh, no, like the census?
Oh, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
And that'll
Yeah,
work.
I think we all agree. That's great.
Start somewhere. Thank you. The 911 Center, we have a great relationship with the City of Marion, and we're okay right now, but the county is growing. There's more traffic on the interstate than ever before, and there are more visitors to this county than ever before. There's nowhere to grow in that facility. And so, again, just planting seeds of this is something, not tomorrow, but one day, while maybe we're all still here, where these conversations need to be happening to some degree. And so you have to prioritize, what does the 911 fund have at the state level for facility grants anymore? That's something we don't know as of yet, but just we could look into at such point as we were being directed. And I mentioned the state, the state does inspect and permit our animal shelter, and we have a great staff right now. The facility is about 45 years old. It's fine. We put money in it every year to keep it up and paint and work on floor sealing and things, heat and air and all that. But it is small, and the state does say we're really undersized for the size of our county. When it was built, the county's population was below 30,000, and we're closer to 50 now. So they're not saying come in, build an $8 million shelter, but there's some small additions that can be done, somewhat minimal cost. Maybe get them off our back. So next steps, I don't have any dates other than definites here, so we would need to have a hearing June 14th. Board would need to approve the budget on June 30th. I would recommend before the 14th that you have a workshop to give me feedback on what you've seen today. Maybe talk about the 7th. And then if you wanted to meet maybe later in the week, the 14th, we did talk to Miss Wiley, who is responsible, even though she is the assessor, she is responsible for getting the bills ready. And so once they go out, it's Miss Anya Frey's job to worry about it. And so Miss Wiley understands that really about the 18th is sort of a drop dead date on making any rate changes. So we really, by that point, so the week of the 14th to the 18th, if you wanted to change the rate up or down, don't imagine up, but you would need to at least tell us that. The line items and everything else can wait all the way up to the 30th. The rate has to be it has to be set in stone by the 18th. So if any other district rates were to be changed, I'd recommend even before that be set. So any questions?
Sure, yeah, I got one. I'll communicate to you, I know Tony has that. One big thing that we wanted to see happen in this budget was a penny rate reduction on your property tax rate. 3 years ago, the board went and built and did additions and remodeled, and it was a great move because it sure beat building a new courthouse. And we had to raise the property tax rate by 3 3/4, Allison. And the board at that time said just as soon as we could, feasibly and be fiscally responsible in doing so, lower it by whatever we could do, we wanted to visit that. And so I think that after reviewing the budget recommendation, Mr. Wooten, I'm not going to vote for a budget that does not have that in it. But I think that there's plenty of time, and I think that, you and Allison and the board can work together to maybe find some revenue to be able to do that. I feel confident that can occur. And you did a good job on listening to the board and trying to get everybody's, you got 5 people, and we all come from different angles on the budget. And you've done it. It's a hard job to listen to 5 people and try to get everything that 5 people want to see happen in a document. But I'm just saying right now, I'll vote against it if we don't have that in it. But I think we can work together and be able to get something resolved to where we get that in there. That'd be my only comment.
And we've talked about this. Sometimes the way the process works out, things could change a lot between now and definitely June 30th, but even several weeks on the revenue side. But we have to, present something by June 1st, and this is it is the best we can come up with to meet the needs and obligations at this point. But regardless of what it all shakes out to be, we'll be more than happy to make it all work out.
Sure, y'all do it. Mr. Chairman, I'll say that Allison and does an excellent job, and her staff, and Ashley does too. And when I make a statement and I say I'm going to do something, I try to do it, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And
whenever we gave that, whenever we presented that 3 3/4% property tax increase a couple years ago, we had things that come upon us, such as the courthouse, that was unexpected. We had to do that. That wasn't something that we had a choice of. We had to make that move and spend that money on the courthouse and other things. And, you know, whenever we implemented that 3 3/4, you know, I made the statement then that we'd look at it again in a couple of years and, you know, we would reduce that rate if at all possible and try to give back to the taxpayer. So I'm pretty much on the same page with David on this. That is very important to me that we find a way to do a 1 cent tax reduction.
That's all.
Any other comments, questions?
So we're gonna meet again on the 7th?
I had suggested that.
We need to hear a motion to, I guess, to recess to June the 7th at 11:30 here at the University.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
We've got a motion second to do that. Any question or comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.